right. Welcome to ayeQ Answers, the podcast where we explore how today's B2B leaders are redefining growth. So this podcast is all about B2B growth, and particularly how we grow strategically, efficiently, and in a controlled, predictable way. So throw out the guesswork. You gotta have data, you gotta have alignment, you gotta have strategy. And Valerie, when you and I started chatting, it was complete alignment. So I'm so excited to have you on our podcast. So today our episode is around why revenue growth lies and what it's hiding. So I loved this piece that you did, Valerie. So I thought our listeners would enjoy it. So let me give you a quick intro. So my guest today is Valerie Cobb. She's a commercial architect and transformation leader who works with founders, operators, and investors to align revenue, margin, and operational structure so businesses can scale predictably and increase enterprise value. So now you know why this is complete alignment with with the two of us. She's also the creator of the Commercial Architecture Framework, a model designed to diagnose why revenue becomes unpredictable, margins tighten, and customer acquisition costs expand. Her work focuses on redesigning how revenue actually behaves across product, pricing, channels, sales, and delivery. So, Valerie, welcome to ayeQ Answers.
Oh, thank you, Dana. This is fun. And that
Fantastic.
is somebody else that you just read.
It's all you. It's all you. And it's super impressive what you do. So Valerie, let's dive in here. I love I've heard you say that revenue is a signal, but structure determines outcome. So unpack that for us a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess we need to also diagnose what a signal is. A signal just says something like it might be moving in a direction. If you think of financial statements, they really are signals of health. But I remember a guy who was teaching financial statements, and he said all it does is give us clues. It doesn't always give us the answer of what the problem is, right? So in the signal side of the fence, you can have revenue coming in, and it's a signal of one line item that there is some health, right? But it doesn't mean that your whole organization is going to achieve the outcomes that you have set up. So if you have a system that systematically tracks KPIs to whatever the scorecards are, revenue being one of the signals, then the systemized process, proven and repeatable, would tell you a little bit more about whether you're going to hit your target, South Pole or North Pole.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah, and I've seen that we used to call it whiplash sales,
right?
One quarter I'm killing it, and the next quarter I'm in the ditch,
Yeah.
right? And I remember I was talking to a COO of one of our customers, and when we first started engaging, and he said, Dana, I just want to know when we're about to fall in the ditch,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So because you don't want to tell your board one thing and deliver something completely different. That's a great way to lose board confidence.
Right.
Um,
Completely
so,
agree. Yeah.
so you talked about KPIs and having to look at revenue growth within the scope of a breadth of KPIs. What do you typically look for?
Well, and I'm going to give a plug out to ayeQ right now because it's a very similar kind of scenario. Um, to me, all KPIs are driven in a business environment. We're not talking gym memberships and those types of things. In a business environment, especially in you have several. I'm looking at forecasting out 5 years. So I want to see trends and modelings just like economic indicators, because there is no depression if you are already watching and pivoting as you go along continuously. And key performance indicators, OKRs, whatever you want to call,
Hmm.
whether you're in that camp or other camps, um, for businesses, especially board driven businesses, but still any businesses should be monitoring the financial statements as their scorecard. Now, when we talk about commercialization, you can't do price, positioning, any of those things without understanding where the business will be going on a regular basis. You can't give employees, you can't give AI outcomes either if you can't understand if there is, for instance, one, the return on investment, right? But how do you actually work customer acquisition cost, return on investment, if you don't understand the financial statements? And because really those are the things that drive. And I will find in small business, they're okay with the lemonade stand P&L statement, but they don't understand balance sheet, they don't understand cash flow,
Hmm.
and businesses come and go based on cash flow, right? I mean that's it.
Yes.
So then if you have the P&L, if you use the P&L as your sort of KPIs for your employees or for the board and that healthiness, you know that with revenue on your lemonade stand, and then you have COGS or costs of services or whatever, and then you have kind of your gross at that point. Then you have all the expense deductions from departments to you name it. So that's where operations actually lives, admin operations, right?
Hmm.
And because of that, you can actually affix key performance indicators for delivery. How many times did you have to redeliver? How many times did you have to do? And key performance indicators are just, what are the performance indicators? People overcomplicate that for goals. And I think they overcomplicate it because they don't have a platform like ayeQ where they can actually read digestible data that and stuff that is not like that's out there. It could be unclassified data, it could be all over the place. And you're pulling in and creating kind of the Uber platform for Tableau type stuff, and we all need to be able to see in real time where a company is going with those KPIs, right? So for me, a typical key performance indicator will be customer acquisition cost. How much
Hmm.
is it costing us to get a customer? Because you may end up, if you're in a SaaS driven world, you may be looking at things like your burn rate. If you're a finance, right? The burn rate, how long can we do this? The product developers are looking at, well, how long do we have till we choke ourselves, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you're trying to get funding, well, it will tell you if you need to get funding, right? And so burn rate is another key, you can watch it as a key performance indicator. So how much are you burning through things? And that's where it goes back even to the expenses and the cap table and the P&L. If you do your lemonade stand, here's my lemonade. How much did it cost me to do my lemonade? And then how much is left over at the end, right? And so to tie in a specific key performance indicator would be dependent on what the scale, what stage in scale a business is.
Hmm.
Um, and but for me, definitely it would be the TAM SAM sum. Do you have enough market?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so that is to me a key performance. You're going to actually map back to the TAM SAM sum. Do you have enough? And if not, do we need to add a new product? So that might be for your product dev team, that might be for some others. But all of that is mappable within ERP systems, CRMs, that then can be pulled into reporting mechanisms. For a board, they're definitely going to want to see P&L and where you're at, where you're going. And if you're working on an exit strategy, you've got to be able to prove that your sales team, for instance, isn't one lumpy guy that the rest can't sell, or the CEO is the only guy selling today, that kind of stuff. So I can't really pin down one specific thing, but if you look at the financial statements, you can get 5 gazillion KPIs to give to your team and watch. So I would probably do it more departmentally, if that helps.
Mhm.
I would probably say, okay, if it's go to market, this, if it's product, it's going to be this, etc. Yeah,
Yeah, I love what you're saying because a lot of people will look at revenue operations or the revenue growth function
yeah,
and assume that the data in CRM and marketing automation is enough to
no,
understand.
no,
It is not, right?
no,
Because this is not top line growth like it was, a decade ago. This is
yeah,
efficient growth, right?
yeah,
We want accelerated, efficient growth. And
yeah,
so, in order to get efficient growth, it has to, like you were saying, you have to get your CAC down because you're not going to get a whole lot of additional marketing funding until you can prove, that you have a very healthy CAC number, customer acquisition cost number. And one of the KPIs, so when we're doing KPIs, and thank you for the call out in ayeQ, but when we're doing enterprise-wide KPIs to look at the whole health of the business, you have to have financial data. You have to have operational data, right?
mhm,
Because even if you're trying to optimize what marketing campaigns and programs do we want to invest in, it's not just, well, how many leads did we get from each one? That is like
exactly.
the worst way to look at whether a campaign was effective. You have to
And
look
yet over
all
LinkedIn,
the
that's
way.
everywhere. How many leads? And I'm going,
I
I can buy leads. Those don't convert.
No, we do not run payroll on leads, to your
Yes.
point, on cash flow, right? And so understanding that you have to optimize and not even based on how much like one step further is pipeline contribution,
Yeah.
right? That's one, but really, what are we manufacturing here? We're manufacturing bookings. We're
Yeah.
manufacturing retention. We're
Yes.
that is what we are manufacturing. And when we look at, the contribution to bookings, that's what helps us optimize our marketing spend.
Yeah.
How do we get that continuously get that CAC down? And another great KPI related to CAC is LTV to CAC, lifetime
Yeah.
customer
LT.
lifetime value to CAC.
Yeah.
And how much does it cost to get you that customer in, and what's the payback over time?
Well, and then the retention metrics, right?
Hmm.
Because we want churn rate to be very, very low because it also customer acquisition cost over time lowers if they stay and keep repeating over and over again. And it's always easier to, if you do a good job, it gets when competitors enter the market, it gets harder and harder to get new customers. So so then you're doing more expensive activities to get those customers because of it, right? So, and I won't even get into that, but you said something very interesting. And I think also, especially in the technology space, and I know we're in a lot of different spaces, you and I, but in the technology space, something that has been kind of on the forums and is bubbling to the top is the fact that um, tech stacks have a hard time promoting why they should be purchased to begin with. And VCSOs, chief information security officers, chief technology officers, they enter also now into the cybersecurity and cyber risk realm. And so I would say that one of their problems with the board is they can't educate the board on the risks without quantifying the risks. So their KPIs have changed over time
Mm.
to meet the risk modeling because yeah, no board says, gosh, I want to spend money on governance and compliance, right? But
Um,
but
why
it
not?
does if they're held liable to the tune of the IBM, you know, risk scoring and the data hacks that happen, and we're all in this kind of general world. But what we're really saying when it's risk is it drives up cost, operational cost. You have to pay out, and it drives up customer acquisition costs because we know with like CrowdStrike and Delta a few years ago, there was some pretty hefty fights that were going on with their nice little hack, and there was a lot of
Mhm.
ticked off flyers that
Well,
and it
it's
causes brand damage. So damage control on brand is one of the KPIs that is, I think, underestimated for the future. It should be part of your modeling, but yes, it should be in there because it drives into that ratio.
well, it's interesting. So, I'm an engineer by background. You and I have chatted about this, that, I look at the growth function of a B2B company as a manufacturing process,
It is.
right? And what you just said, I've been in and around manufacturing software, and especially in like medical device and life sciences, where defects are killers,
Yep.
right? And so
Recall,
this
everything.
yeah, so the whole compliance thing is baked into the process
Yeah.
because it is very known that if you deliver a defective medical device, what that means from a recall, from a health, a human life perspective. And
Yep.
it's known that it's going to be part of the process.
Yep.
I think, what you're describing is, and by the way, in that industry, it took a while to understand the cost of compliance, right?
Yeah.
Or the
It's
cost
the
of
cost of
quality.
compliance. Yeah.
And
That was the rise of the quality control, right? Because
exactly.
manufacturing does it can be medical devices, but you end up on let's think about your system just on a manufacturing floor, because I've been in heavy equipment manufacturing.
Hmm.
Rig is $1.5 million. Okay, rig doesn't work at $1.5 million. What happens? How much does it cost? And before it leaves the plant, you have all of these systems and this QC role that is going, yes, does it match up? Yes, does it match up? Because that's lean manufacturing, right? To make sure that it's compliant the whole way so you don't have a defective product. And in healthcare, I was working a Kaiser use case for middleware platforms one time, and the reality is, if the system wasn't set properly, I had to actually go back to one of their organizations that they sold to and ask them for 100% price increase because because it was miscalculated through the entire systemized process.
Hmm. Well, I mean, you talk about through the process. I was just thinking, if that $1.5 million rig, if they didn't know that it was defective till it came off the line, somebody's
Yeah.
fired, right?
Somebody is definitely
Somebody's
fired.
fired. But you know what? We miss a quota, a bookings target, and it's like that's part of the job. It's like, oh well, that's just
No,
part of
not
the
with
growth
me.
function.
Not with
I'm me
me.
neither. Me neither. It's like, no, you should have known way ahead of time that you were not going to hit that bookings target. And
And
that's the
that's
whole
ayeQ,
design.
right? I said ayeQ, it's probably IQ, but
Mm-hmm.
that is exactly what you expose.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and that is, so we're talking about this whole philosophy, which is near and dear to my heart, which is this is a system. We got to approach it as a system. It's not a deal here, a deal there. It's not a market size of one. It is a TAM, like you
Yep.
were saying, it is an addressable market. We can approach this as a system, and we can get to a controllable, predictable outcome.
Yeah.
So I'll segue there into what are the indicators that this is falling apart? You've seen it over and over again. Give us some more stories.
Especially in long sales cycles. I got a gazillion. I'll start because you talked about bookings. And here's one of the challenges too with bookings versus realizing. So there is bookings realizing a sale or revenue, especially there is a lag in manufacturing. I'll use the example of a medical device or something. You book it, that's revenue, but it
Hmm.
hasn't paid. That's the sale, and so
Hmm.
realized, right? And if you have something that is very, in software, we're very quick at booking and sales being almost like this because you can deliver so quickly, right? There's no manufacturing floor that takes
Hmm.
time to build. Um, and so you don't really have that inventory model that you have to deal with, right? So, um, but the main one that seems to be the hot topic, two of them right now, are enterprise sales cycles, and they're usually at least 6 to 9 months. And if you hire a salesperson in that system, it's going to take them 6 to 9 months ramp time. So if
Hmm.
they are not doing the right activities, and people always say, well, no, you can't map the right activities. It's, salespeople are awesome at this. They're like, I just feel it. And I'm like, well, let's document how you feel it. How many times do you feel that? 20 times? And if you felt that 20 times, did it actually close at 50%, or was it closing at 0% and you felt it 20 times? It's like, and the problem is the long sales cycle is very similar to a manufacturing system, right? It is, you've invested dollars as an organization, potentially in a marketing system, potentially in a sales system, maybe operations. And today's Bitcoin word is obviously AI workforce. And we're seeing rising customer acquisition costs because of organizations that are not holding AI accountable.
Hmm.
So AI itself is also, it's supposed to be the silver bullet. It's going to call people, it's going to develop relationships with people, it's going to enable salespeople to get on a call without hiring people. It's going to go through all the motions, even in operations and workflows that humans went through, but it's not being held accountable. So you're not seeing it till it's down the road. And we're calling that a bit the AI bomb next year. And I'm not saying that there's technologies that aren't built on that are great, but you're seeing a lot of organizations just going willy-nilly with AI, just like with a salesperson. So you hire a salesperson and you're like, here's your training for 2 weeks. And between 3 months and 9 months, you as an organization, you don't do any kind of review with them to see how their activity level is increasing based on your best practices. Because, I get it, startups, they may not have a best practice, but there's a lot of posted best practices out there. So you have some markers that you can kind of, pivot on. But what happens in that whole system is if you're not watching at least the activity level that might produce a sale based on your best practice, if you're a startup, existing company with a new product, same thing, right? It is not realized yet. So you're almost in startup land on that new product. So you're not marked, like you said, is the product actually going to sell? I mean, honestly, is it really, or was it just theory, right? And so you might have a year lag in enterprise deals. And I'll say enterprise, I'm going to shoot low. I'm going to say, if it's like 100,000 a year product, let's just say that's enterprise, even though there's different definitions of what enterprise. I mean, obviously selling into Coca-Cola is enterprise, right? So, but if it is this long haul sale and it's not immediate, we're not talking SaaS where it's like, here it is, demand gen kind of stuff. You may be in the South Pole when you were hitting the North Pole, and you have now spent you have now have the HR expense of hiring that organization, that person. We'll use
Hmm.
that as the example. You hired that person. That costs money because you're costing yourself in revenue for those ramp up time, right? For a fully operational sales engine for that. And then AI the same way, depending on what it is. And then on top of that, you may be causing damage to your industry because this person doesn't know what the heck they're doing. So you're losing customers on top of that. So you're not watching that well enough. And and yeah, I mean, I've closed deals clear back from 7 years. It took me 7 years to close. So
Hmm.
how do you actually track and monitor, but make sure that there's other deals in between the 7 year mark that are actually also hitting in the funnel, and continuing in the funnel. So business is a moving organism. It isn't a, hey, we got this snapshot. We don't need to measure it. I hear that all the time. We don't need to measure it. We just got a gut feeling. And I'm like, then you aren't running a business.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. So I'll give you one of my war stories that is like I'm sitting here thinking about it as you're
I
talking,
can see
and
your face turning.
I know. I'm like, oh. So I was working with a company, gosh, like, this must have been 8 years ago, something like that. And they were in the utility software space. And they got the ton of funding, right? Smart software, all this stuff. They got a ton of funding. They brought in, I think it was six really heavy hitter enterprise AEs.
Oh
Okay,
my God.
super, super
If you don't know
expensive.
what an AE is, account executive, they're in the sales
Thank
engine.
you. Yes. So these really high dollar
Yeah.
salespeople.
Yep.
And
And they're going
nine
to bring
months,
their territory with us.
what?
That's the other
Yeah.
one.
9 months later, they're out of cash, just like you said.
Burn. Yeah.
Burn, burn, burn. And so I sat down with the president, as he had to say, we're kind of not doing well. And I laid out this model of his revenue targets.
Mm.
And I said, this is what, if you want to get to that bookings target, this is what your organization needs to look like. This is how many sales reps you need. This is how many deals each one needs to be managing at any given time. This is what marketing needs to produce. And he sits there and slumps in his chair and said, well, I wish I'd had that before I hired all those sales reps because
Exactly.
he didn't need them.
That the sad part about that is here's what we teach business 101. We teach that you have a mission, a vision, and your staffing component. So here's how
Mhm,
that looks. And if you want to put it down to Simon Sinek's why, it's my mission is to service the entire globe of doing all these wonderful things. My vision is that my organization will love me dearly. And here is my product, and here is how I'm going to hire, and there's my business plan, right?
mhm,
I can't tell you how many business plans I get. Somebody who says, I'm a startup, I can't afford you. And you're like, okay, don't afford me, but at least get your business plan right. Go to some
mhm,
accelerators, go to something, but even the accelerators still propagate that whole business plan. You got to get your pitch deck together. And I'm like,
mhm,
no, your pitch deck doesn't come together until you have actually financially modeled your business plan. And if
mhm,
you don't start financially modeling it and somebody won't repeat buying your why, I don't care how good your why is, Simon and everybody else is, oh,
mhm,
I'm so passionate about this and that. And I'm like, that's great. Is somebody else going to buy that passion over and over again? Because
mhm,
otherwise, they don't give a freaking flying toot. You're not a charity, you're a business. And the reality is, I see that all the time. The main landing page of a website is, we are fostering this great organization. And then people jump the website and they wonder why their homepage is not getting any activity on it. And and I'm sorry, you gotta be you actually inflame this. But again, I'm going to drive this back to an ayeQ, right? Because if you can't model your business plan as if it's in business and get it past a Shark Tank, you're not going to be able to be successful. You're going to end up hiring CEOs and different people to do this because you're very product led in that
mhm,
sense. I've got this great widget, I'm my why. And
mhm,
after that it's not sales led. It isn't proven, repeatable. And you can't tell when you're going to run out of money or to hire those big, expensive. Your entire financial modeling tells you when to hire what employee at what year, what time, how to hire them. It takes the passion and the oh, I'm a charity, which you might be a charitable person, but if you don't have profit, you can't even donate to a charity. So at the end of the day, the business dies, employees don't have jobs anymore because you bought this bloated group at the wrong time. Timing is everything in
Mm-hmm.
that. And I just hate it. They're like, well, I don't know how to forecast. I'm scared of forecasting. I'm going to be committed. And I'm like, no, you have to theoretically, a board isn't going to look at it until you have something there either. But theoretically, you would have known that that was the wrong sales model if you would have seen the cash flow, but you also would have had your TAM, SAM, SUM all boiled down. You would have known what percentage that you could go after. You almost end up having your entire GTM from the initial business plan, right? Everybody says GTM, GTM, and I'm going, you can have multiple GTMs on different product launches, but your overarching business plan tells you where you're going every single year. And if it's not financially modeled, then yeah, maybe you are a charity, but even then, in the nonprofits, still have to have funds coming through the door.
No money, no mission. Yep. But that, it's so it's interesting because, I mean, we know the statistic 90% of software startups fail.
Yeah.
Um, Most within the first year, then 5 years, then seven or whatever it is.
And
And it's
why
like,
is that?
yeah,
Primarily due to cash flow.
yes. And it's not because the founder wasn't smart, the
Yeah.
founder wasn't passionate. It's none of those things.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the financial stability, right? They
Yeah.
can no longer, because I will tell you, it's going to take way longer than you think it's going to take, right? So, okay.
Well,
Well, I
and
know
why
that you
do
and I,
they? Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Well,
I
I
was
want to
going
get to you run something called a 30-day revenue reset, and I want to
to.
have an opportunity for you to talk about that because, I think now that we've scared everybody to death
Oh,
and
it's a
um,
blast. Don't be scared. It's
yeah,
fun.
yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. But I do want to talk about this approach that you have, so that, some of our listeners can benefit from that.
It's a repurposing of many different methodologies. So I can't say I put a name on it, but a lot of organizations really, really struggle, especially when they're pivoting or they're trying to get acquired. Um, they just don't know what's working. And they'll call me and they'll say, well, I, how much are you? That's the first thing they say. And I'm like, I really don't know because I really don't know what you're doing. I have to dig in
Mm,
to all the financials and understand your goals. And I hear a lot of business coaches say, well, we're holistically, we want to know their heartbeat and they're this and they're that. And I'm like, I get that, but most of them need taught to fish, and I can't do that unless I know what they already know about fish. So the
mhm,
30-day revenue reset is just basically an assessment of their entire environment. I call it revenue because for some reason people always, when you say profit reset, they're kind of like they they start to think of all the roles so much, but sometimes people will revenue, that makes sense. So we don't have leads coming in the door, we don't have revenue coming, and so it becomes the first entry of our signal that there is a problem that's happening, right? And so yeah, it's just very simple. It's just tell me what you're kind of doing, and I just have a quiz that they can do, and they can do that for free. And it just kind of tells me about their environment. And it also, I have other organizations, it helps me build a quote for them,
mhm,
and it's very simple. But they usually go away with knowing areas that are that they're struggling in, and small business especially I was talking to an HVAC guy and he calls me a CFO all the time. He was, he was, he's trying to grow his business. He's at like 3 million and he was like, um, yeah, you're the best CFO. And I get that all the time. And I'm like, I'm not a CFO. But anyways, what he fundamentally does not understand is business. And what
Mhm.
comes to the surface is that the gaps of what they don't understand. They may have had a marketer who said, I do GTM, and it's like, but they didn't understand holistically how the business should operate. And there's a lot of systems out there for, and it's like cookie cutter. One asked me, oh, we're going to send out postcards and we're going to get, and I said, okay, you're setting your KPIs, correct? And they were like, well, yeah, they're doing, the group is doing this with us and we're spending 8 grand a month at this. And I was just like floored. And I'm like, how do you know that you should be sending out postcards? Well, because they told us on an average it gets us this. And I'm like, do your people buy by looking in their mailbox or do they dump that in the trash? And he
Mhm.
was like, well, we're going to run it for a couple months and test it. And I'm okay with testing it, right? That's fine. But what was kind of happening with this mailer was he had no plan of how the conversions would work.
Yep.
And because he had no plan of how the conversions would work, I even said to him, I said, well, what's your average package? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, so you're sending out an $8,000 a month mailer without knowing when they call or they click what package they're going to buy, first of all. And second of all, your yes, and it's like the digital marketers. Well, it only costs so much a postcard. Well, I get that, but you don't have a plan for that spend. You have no way to track that spend. And so a lot of times I uncover all those hidden, like, oh, was I supposed to be doing that? And I'm like, dude, you just got sold a song and a dance without any return on investment.
Mhm.
You have no idea. All you did is got told by a salesperson, yeah, we've seen in the HVAC vendor that they get this kind of result. So here's the math. And this is going to happen for you. You see that on Facebook all the time. It's like these guys, I'm the pitch master. And because I'm the pitch, if you do this all the time, and then you see in the little fine print that it says, oh, but I only have like 2 clients that make that much money. The rest of them all just pay me. And I'm going, really? So the revenue reset is to uncover those little ooh gotchas. That's it.
Yeah. I was thinking, what one of the transformational pieces when we start working with someone is I hear GTM all the time,
Oh,
and I think it's got a million different definitions.
it
And
does.
so the thing is, just like you said, the first question is, how are you going to make money?
Exactly.
How are you going to make money? Right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so, what are you selling? Who are you selling it to?
Yep.
Right? The packages, like you said, what are your offerings? Where are you going to find these people?
Yep.
It's fundamental questions like that, and it's not, I have to put in here that, you know, being a founder is super, super hard. And it's
Yes.
not like they're doing things they shouldn't be doing. But they do have to recognize when they need to bring in an expertise they don't have. Right. Because
They honestly
I
do.
have fired myself from several functions within my own company, because I'm like, I can't market the product that I, built.
Yep.
Don't try to market your own product. You will
Yeah.
fail tremendously. But just recognizing, I mean, gosh, I have great respect for anybody who founds a company. It's really, really hard. And um, totally understand how you get to a place that you've had to get to with bubblegum and toothpicks. And then it's like, oh, okay. So now where do I go from here? I didn't build all that infrastructure. Well, that's okay. It's okay. You have people like Valerie here who can come in and fill in the stuff that you don't know how to do or don't have the experience doing. Once you learn how to do it, then you'll know how to do it.
Yeah,
So anyway,
that's good. That's good.
I don't take this as you know, a knock. There's an expertise and a process that is known. You don't have to make it up yourself, right? We know how to do this. We've done it over and over. Um, so
Yeah.
uh, anyway, so I I knew this was going to happen, Valerie. You and I, la, 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 because there's about three other topics that I want to explore, and I've used great self discipline in not going there. But I do want to, I want to give you the opportunity to, based on the topics that we were able to cover, what's a takeaway? A listener, if they're going to take away, one, two nuggets, what would those be from your perspective?
Hungry, humble, and smart. And I'll say it this way. You might be listening and overwhelmed because there is a lot of detail that we've talked about today, a lot of detail. I like what you addressed just a minute ago, Dana, and you don't, part of the reason that there are tools that are built is so that you don't have to be the guy who shovels, right? And part of the reason that you hire employees is that you're not the end all be all. So if you're talking founder versus existing or pivoting company, there's different stages of companies. And because of that, you hungrily need to go after what you want. That's your passion. Those are those things. But you have to have the humility to realize, just like you said, I need help. And that could be AI tools, that could be hiring resources, fractionals, that could be hiring. Um, you do not, especially, and I'm going to say this especially as women, you do not have to be the end all be all of everything for your company. So that's the humble. That leads into the smart. And the smart is if you are not building a business and you're only doing this to maybe have profit and a few things, then you're going to find yourself in the South Pole very, very quickly. And the smart part of it is making sure that you set those smart goals so that they're achievable, all of those things, but that you are not going all around willy-nilly with what this business is. You are doing a business. This isn't a I want to lose weight, maybe sort of thing. You're affecting lives, you're affecting your own life, and it is a business. It is not you know, a, don't treat it as a side gig on that. Be smart about how you put your KPIs together, how you hire, how you set up your business. And there's countless resources out there. And that all the data is going to inform you. And then you will make that decision based on hungry, humble, and smart.
I love that. I love that. Okay, well,
Okay.
we'll wrap up. Tell our folks how they can find you, Valerie.
Oh my goodness. You can find me a lot of different places. I'm going to just choose one because she'll have it in the show notes, I'm sure, for other things. But if you just want to go to my website, and I always say this very carefully because my name is Valerie Cobb. And yes, it is a play on venture capital as well, but it is the impactvc.com. And I have a contact page that has my calendar underneath it
Fantastic.
and everything. Just go there, and then the other social media channels and everything, you can find me from that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, great episode, Valerie. Thank you as always, and I'm sure we'll be chatting a lot more in the near future.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.